Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat Live. Happy Friday night, wherever you are watching us. We cannot thank you enough for choosing to start your weekend with your good friends, Josh and Luka. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, well, I say as always, I wasn't here last week, is Luka. Luka, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. I'm glad to have you in the host seat of the
Mhm.
episode this week. I don't mind filling in that role. It's just a much different one where I can't just mindlessly, although I do put thought into my statements, just talk about Bills football, and then I actually have to drive conversation. It's a fun seat to be in. We love Stokes, of course, when he joins our show, but it feels just right when you are to my, trying to think if I'm watching left and
You're over
everything is
there.
fine.
Damn it. You're over there.
Yeah, I was screwing that up last week. You are that direction to me,
Mhm.
and that works great for me. So I'm glad to be back tonight with you to talk some more Bills football.
So right off the bat, we want to cop to something. We recorded this a couple hours earlier than it's running live. So it is Friday night. The injury report's out. We are recording this a little after 5 p.m. Eastern. So unfortunately, we will not be able to interact with chat tonight. I apologize about that. Some things came up. Some illnesses are happening on my family side of things. Normal like bugs that happen this time of year that just makes it easier to record it before the kids come home. So we appreciate you all being understanding of that. But we were certainly not going to miss this mega matchup, Luca, between the Bills and the Dallas Cowboys, who are getting a lot of shine after dominating the Philadelphia Eagles last week. And there is some chatter now. Are they the second best team in the entire NFL? Behind who I think most think is the San Francisco 49ers. So I want to start there, just off the top. In your opinion, based on resume, based on body of work, based on how you view this team, are they currently the second best team in the NFL?
Um, it's a great debate. I will say that statement win they had last week against their divisional foes and rivals, the Eagles, definitely put the question in the air. I think the ceiling for the Eagles is still higher. Their defense has just been massively disappointing. And then on top of that, I think it was brought up well during the game itself where the Eagles have had this stretch of games where the Dallas one was kind of the tail end of what we call, a stretch from hell, where they had the Bills, they had the Niners, they had all these teams where the Chiefs starting kind of that stretch where late games, hard fought games, physical games where it just added on and kept kind of stacking up against them where eventually the legs just got swept out under them. Whether they were really exhausted or not, we don't know. But you see mental lapses out of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, where they're just basically not holding onto the ball, things like that. That was very uncharacteristic of an Eagles team. That it just all piled on in a massive spot against the Cowboys, who are also a massive home team. So it's just one of those things where I don't know if me myself can put the Cowboys over the Eagles, even with that win, but it's absolutely a conversation. I will say that. And when the conversation even before that game really was, it's the Niners and then probably the Eagles and then a couple other teams. If then all of a sudden the Cowboys kind of put their stamp on things, naturally you should have that conversation. There's nothing wrong with that. You beat what seems to be the king of the top when it comes to the Eagles of being that next best team. So why not be maybe potentially that number two?
And when you look at the Cowboys' resume from a ranking standpoint, from a statistical standpoint, they really do check all the boxes. I mean, simply put, they are a 10-3 football team, which is tied with the Baltimore Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the San Francisco 49ers as having the best record in the entire sport. When you sort the standings by total points scored, the Cowboys are at the tippy top. They have 421 points scored this entire season, which is the best in the entire sport. And when you sort it reverse by points against, they've only given up 233 points, which is the fourth best in the sport. So when you have what looks like an elite defense, what looks like an elite offense, at least from a scoring standpoint, and an elite record, that is about as good as it gets. So what Luca and I are going to talk about next, I do not want to come off as homers or as we're trying to cherry pick faults. What we are trying to do is poke holes in them for a reason of are they as good as they look? Is there potential reason for Bills fans to be optimistic? Because I will say, as good as the Cowboys are, as their record is better than the Bills are still favored by Vegas by 1.5 or 2 points, depending on which sports book you're looking at, which I think is interesting. I want to get Luca's opinion on that a little bit later. But Luca, the first place I want to start with is 10-3 football team, the Dallas Cowboys. And look, you play who you play, and the Bills can't be hypocrites. We can't be hypocrites. We've seen the Bills lose to the Jets and the Patriots this year, and the Broncos weren't exactly in great form when the Bills lost to them. Cowboys wins this year, Giants twice, Eagles at home. That's really the one good one. Seahawks at home, Patriots, Chargers, Rams, Commanders, Jets, Panthers. So really, they have the one quality win against the Eagles, who right now are not flying high, no pun intended. I think we saw that firsthand with the Bills. They were a very beatable opponent on that day, and the Bills just found a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Other than that, you're talking about teams that are either faltering with backup quarterbacks or having all kinds of injury concerns or just mediocre NFL teams. And it's not the Cowboys' fault they don't make the schedule, but I do think that gives you a sign of hope. And then when you dive into the schedule a little bit more, Luka, you see some intriguing things about how the Cowboys have performed at home versus on the road. So taking all of that into consideration, I know one of your favorite words begins with an F. It is not that word. Parents, don't worry about it when you describe the Cowboys. Um, Taking all that into consideration, if you want to expand on the home road splits, because you brought up a good thing about the playing surface too, what does that tell you?
Yeah, the Cowboys. How do we start this point? Jerry Jones has done a phenomenal job building a stadium, building an environment, building everything, looking at all the details possible to then have a team that is built and designed to play well in a stadium that he designed and built. And they mesh perfectly. When you watch the Cowboys at home on that speed turf that they have, they are flying around everywhere, both sides of the ball, special teams, even. They all of a sudden seem to get this bump when at home and in front of a massive audience that they have there in Jerry World. It's a marriage made perfectly. Like, it just always works. And it always feels like it's an old reliable to them. It's like, even if they were kind of in the downs back in the classic Cowboys days, they still would have these big productive days at home to kind of lean on. Then on the flip side, though, they go away from Jerry World. They go away from home. There's a lot more, and you brought it up too. There's a lot more grass surfaces out there. I brought up playing surface. They've always struggled to play on grass. Like, it always seems to be their Achilles heel. You know, you play in Philly and they all of a sudden are down 10 points on average. Even struggle at times against the Panthers this year, even though they did get that win on a grass surface. They are a different looking team. Now, Buffalo is turf, but I think the road aspect of it, and then also how they play on the road, drastically changes, and they're just not built for the road game nearly as much, or it's not a game that can go on the road kind of deal. It's something where they feel like they almost need to change things too much, or maybe go a little bit out of their comfort zone than compared to what they do at home, that it naturally reduces the production of their offense, maybe even kind of has the defense not playing on all cylinders as well. And it's just one of those things where they are a home, they need home field out of, if we're looking at the NFC, they need home field more so than the Niners, than the Eagles, and anyone else. Like, those games travel. The Cowboys game does not travel. So they are the type of team where, I mean, in this game's respect, every game going forward, they know what they have in front of them. They need to win these games to hopefully have a chance of getting home field advantage as much as they can, because in this game itself, and then even going forward, whenever they're on the road, they're just a completely different animal, and kind of one that doesn't quite have as much bite to it as what they do at home.
Yeah, and I tell you, you really don't have to look much further than Dak Prescott, who is having an excellent season by most betting sites and honestly just by common sense at this point. He is the leader in the MVP race to this point. When you look at his home road splits, in his 7 home games, he has a 74 completion percentage. And okay, so I don't want to have to keep repeating this. 7 home games, 6 road games. At home, 74% completion percentage. On the road, it drops 13 points, 63 and a half. Yardage, that's fine. We're not even going to get into it because there's more home games. Touchdown to interception ratio, 20-2 at home, 8-4 on the road. Quarterback rating, 122.5 at home, 88.8 on the road. The biggest difference of any quarterback in the entire sport. So something goes on with these Cowboys on the road. It could be just as simple as they choose to have their worst days, but I think Luka brings up a good point. You can even think back to some days in the drought where an average to below average Bills team would go to Dallas and get their doors blown off by Tony Romo or they even went there one year and lost to Quincy Carter, and that Cowboys team ultimately amounted to nothing. But at home, they were just a different animal. I do think the Bills benefit from this game being in their building. Let's talk about Dak Prescott, Luka. He is having a tremendous season, home road splits aside. What kind of quarterback do you think he is at this point in time? Do you think he has elevated himself to the point that he should be in the conversation with the Allens, the Burrows when healthy, the Mahomes? Or is he still kind of in that next tier? And I know this is a name that's jarring for folks, but maybe like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff or maybe a Stafford when he's not playing at his best, where he can drive a nice car, but boy, if you ask him to be the reason why we're winning, you might be a bridge too far.
Yeah, to me, he's that kind of half tier above game manager. He is that guy where he can make those great throws for you, and you kind of really pull certain things out of the hat for you at times, but you can't lean on him. You can't kind of put it all on his shoulders and ask him to kind of, especially not do what the Bills do with Josh Allen, it seems like, in order to win games. And I'm not trying to say he needs to be that guy. I think he has a much more refined vehicle that he has to steer, an incredible offensive line. He has a good running game to complement it. He has a great weapon in CeeDee Lamb and other complementary weapons around him where you don't need him to be Superman, but he can still, in key moments and clutch moments, hit that big downfield play or anything like that you absolutely need, that can kind of put the stamp on a win for you. And that says to me that he's not just simply that game manager. He can be a dependable guy. Like if we get into a situation in this Bills game where the Bills are up 4, Dak has the ball with a decent amount of time. I'm not going to say whatever time it is. I'm not saying it's under 2 minutes with no timeouts, but if it's still like, hey, you can kind of operate your full offense and you need him to go get you a drive to take the lead again, he absolutely can do that. He is fully capable, and it's not in a game management style. It's truly attacking whatever he needs to, whatever's been working, stuff like that. There's a great staff around him. The players, again, like I mentioned, that he deserves to be in kind of that conversation above, your so and so other players out there that truly are the management type, where yes, they're quality under center on a good team, but they're also replaceable at the same time. I think Dak is kind of that benchmark where you really start getting into a conversation on quarterbacks where he's not replaceable. It's not simply someone you can just plug someone else in and get the same production out of. Early in the season, even we saw national individuals be calling for Cooper Rush because Dak kind of had a slow start. And it's just a kind of an outlandish thing to do because Dak is clearly above a Cooper Rush type, because he would even be above your low end starters that you see around the league elsewhere. So he's definitely one of those guys where if you need a play, he will get it. He doesn't just manage the game. He is capable of making plenty of plays on the field. He's just not quite in that elite category where we put your Josh Allen's, your Mahomes, even your Lamar Jacksons, and so on and so forth, where they can quite truly pull magic out of the hat and just make something special happen out of nowhere.
And the Cowboys are one of those spotlight teams in sports. They're like the Yankees, they're like the Lakers, where they're such a fishbowl, and they are in the NFL, which in our country is like the biggest league by far, not even close. So it's almost hard for good players on those teams to be properly rated. If you're the starting quarterback for the Cowboys, people have an opinion about you. It's not like the starting quarterback randomly for the Falcons, Desmond Ridder. You go ask 10 people on the street, you might find 9 people that are sports fans that have never heard of him. Everybody knows who the starting quarterback is for the Cowboys, and chances are they either think he's great or they think he's terrible. So you're either usually overrated or underrated. I think early on in Dak Prescott's career, he was a little overrated because it's like, whoa, this rookie, this young quarterback took over for Tony Romo, got them to the playoffs, and he's handing the ball off to Zeke a lot, but look how much they're winning. I think now he's kind of gotten a little underrated because of the injuries, because Kellen Moore left. I think we all kind of thought that was going to make them take a step back. And it's good to see Dak silence some haters. I will tell you one stat I am very impressed by from Dak Prescott is under pressure. He has a quarterback rating of 107.5. That is insane. Now, somehow it's only top 4 in the sport, but you see every week, Luka, when you look at the quarterback splits under pressure, like the best way to get the best quarterbacks off their game is to pressure them. Dak does as well as anybody in the sport under pressure. 107 is ridiculous. And that is a testament to him. It's a testament to the system. It's a testament to their playmakers. But all of that being said, we talked about the Dallas Cowboys and how, they're a home cooking team. The other thing they haven't done this year is they haven't played in any weather. The coldest game they have played in this year, 61 degrees, and it was a calm 61 degrees. They have had 5 weather games, all ranging between 61 and 79 degrees. The forecast for Sunday, Luka, 51 degrees. And, sometimes that 51 degrees in Buffalo hits a little bit different than 51 degrees in other cities just because of that wind coming off the lake. There is going to be some wind, 13 miles an hour. Maybe you could speak to what that means and what the gusts could get up to. And it is going to be a rainy, rainy day. Normally, in the Josh Allen career, since we've gotten Stephon Diggs and since since the Bills have become this high-flying pass-first offense, we look at weather as a detriment. Like, oh, no, the weather is going to slow us down. I look at this as one of the few times I can remember being on a show with you where I welcome the weather. And I look at a Cowboys team that's going to be playing without their starting nose tackle, Jonathan Hankins, and starting a rookie there in Mozzie Smith, and they are a little suspect against the run. I look at this offense that's done great indoors in comfortable situations on grass, but now you're talking about slippery turf in the cold with a handful of very key players, by the way, on the injury report that has spent a lot of this week getting over an illness, which I can tell you firsthand from my house. Like, I got over an illness this week. I don't have NFL medical people paying attention to me, but I still don't have my energy back. Like, I'm me, but like even going to the gym today, I don't feel like myself. Um, Now they're going to be out there 51 degrees Buffalo, which again, I'll let you speak more to that. What are you with me? This is an advantage for the Bills because I will tell you that I haven't often thought that weather on these Buffalo Bills is an advantage because of how good the Bills offense has been. But looking at these two teams, I'd rather like bring on the rain.
Yeah, you want something that neutralizes the field a little bit more. This is a situation where in a neutral field, at where these teams are currently at and everything in that regard, I would not feel nearly as good about this matchup as I do right now, sitting here understanding the circumstances of which both of them have to play in Orchard Park. I do think, all things considered, sitting here saying we're going to be playing this game on December 17th and it's going to be kind of in the mid to low 40s and rain, that is quite remarkable in my mind. Like, this should be a much different weather game. But that said, a little bit of rain, it will be kind of, I believe it will be a little bit of a brisk wind coming off the lake. And your gust, general rule of thumb, other than extreme circumstances, your gusts are going to be double whatever your average wind speed is coming off the lake. And it will probably come somewhat regularly, especially considering where the stadium is. Uh, People around here are pretty familiar. And that would be something that I think definitely tips the scale on the Bills side just a little bit, especially in the special teams game where maybe a rookie like Aubrey, who's having a phenomenal start to his career, may find a moment where he questions something, once or twice, and maybe misses something where he, on a good day or at home, especially, he would not be missing it. I mean, him kicking 2 59+ yard field goals in a single game is wild for a rookie. He's got a great leg. But overall, if you feel like the scale is kind of tipped in the favor of the opposition, and in this case, the Cowboys, which I do think, being that they win the line game, I'll call it, on both sides of the ball right now, you want something that at least can neutralize other parts of the field and other things in general that maybe just kind of bring the Bills back a bit and kind of just put it on even level more so where we are comfortable and familiar with this. They are not. We've talked already how they are a big home team, obviously in Jerry World, in a dome in the middle of Texas. You are not dealing with low 40s, rain, and gusts off a lake. Like, that is just never something you have to deal with. You're not familiar with it. It's nothing you can practice either. So that at least gives us a slight leg in that department that can bring it back to even par when it comes to advantages. So yeah, I'm all for it. I would have honestly preferred it more so to be colder and snow, because I think snow is even less of a factor when it comes to the Bills, and even more so of a factor for whatever reason to other teams, even though in general, I would always prefer to play in snow than rain. I think rain can actually affect the game more so than snow. But overall, yeah, I'll take weather all day long in some variety rather than a nice sunny day or even playing this game in a dome, because I think that would really just favor the Cowboys more and more.
A lot of what we're talking about tonight is trying to make the Cowboys, who've had a very comfortable season, uncomfortable. We talked about weather. We talked about, pass rush. Dak obviously does well there. Another thing the Cowboys have not done this season, Luka, much at all, is playing close games. They have a 10-3 record, 13 games. There's that math skills of mine coming back. Only 3 of their games have been in one-score games. They are 2-1 in those games. I had to double check. I was like, no, wait, they lost to Arizona, but somehow they lost to Arizona by more than one score, which is just mind-numbing. And so 2-1 in one-score games. And now, look, I understand the Bills have not been the poster child for how to execute wins in one-score games. But the larger point to me is I feel like this Cowboys team has a chance to be like what Colin Cowherd has often described the Bills as the Mike Tyson team is. They can beat up on bad opponents and they can beat up on good opponents. They can knock you out. But when they get in a fight, are they going to be comfortable? They play in a comfortable dome. They're a high octane offense. Their defense likes to get a lead, pin their ears back, and dominate you. We're going to talk about their defense in a second. It's excellent. But if this Bills team stands in there and punches with them, and all of a sudden the weather's beating down on them, and it's the fourth quarter, and these teams are getting drenched on, are the Cowboys going to be up to something that they haven't been tasked with this year? All of that leads me to think that this game is going to be a defining moment for one of these teams, maybe both of these teams. For the Cowboys to come into Buffalo and win this game, I think it'll be a close game either way. But either way, I think this will be, for the Cowboys to win, this will be a stamp on, okay, you said we haven't beaten anybody. The Bills just beat the Chiefs. You were telling us all how, even though they're the 11 seed right now in the AFC, the world's been just saying that now they're flying to the playoffs. We beat them in their own building. There's a quality win after we just beat the Eagles. So maybe you can simmer down on us not being good, especially if they do so with some late game situations where maybe they have to come back and score late on the Bills defense. Conversely, if the Cowboys come here and lose or lose big, which I think is it within the realm of possibilities here, I think it will open up a lot of questions about this team. And it doesn't have to matter because no matter what, it's still the middle of December, not the middle of January. But for a Cowboys team that hasn't been to the Super Bowl or even the conference championship since the mid 90s, and the team that is a fan base that has seen their team fly as high can be in the regular season, ultimately to crater and disappoint come playoff time with a much longer track record of doing that than we've been getting frustrated with these Buffalo Bills. I think getting thumped in Buffalo or even losing in Buffalo is potentially a starting point for that when you look at what they have left on their schedule with Baltimore and Miami, assuming they get Tyreek Hill back. Do you agree with me? This could be a defining moment, or are you more of the thought of maybe this isn't as big of a game for Dallas? They got the big win last week against Philadelphia, and maybe this is okay, if you get the Bills game, cool, but this isn't as big as it is for the Bills.
I would definitely say that this is not quite as big for the Bills. The counterpoint I have to myself in that regard is even something that I mentioned already, where home field advantage to them is more important than anyone else around them. I think the Niners, who will most likely be your home field kind of guy in the NFC, your home field team, they could travel anywhere, they can play anywhere, they can take anyone anywhere, anytime, any place, doesn't matter. Night, day, under the lights, blind. They are the most complete game. They'll probably have home field, but boy, would the Cowboys feel better about themselves if that game were to come, if it's on their turf, because as we talked about, they're just a completely different animal in their own stadium. Looking ahead and kind of considering where the Cowboys are, I do think that they feel like every game's a must win if that were to truly be a goal that they believe to be obtainable. The reality is, though, even with that win over the Eagles, the shot of not even home field advantage, but winning the division is still kind of in the balance a little bit. If the Eagles were to win out from here, starting on Monday night against the Seahawks, then they have Giants, Cardinals, Giants to finish the season. I do believe that they then win the division no matter what the Cowboys do, because unfortunately the Cowboys lose the the closest tiebreaker that comes along. I don't know if it's division or conference record. It's one of those that they would ultimately lose. And what it comes down to, ironically enough, is an early season loss against the Arizona Cardinals. That would be the downfall of the Cowboys if the Eagles were to take care of business and win out. The irony of that, to me, even myself individually, with all my emotions of that, is wild. But regardless, I think because of that at the end run, if you have truly individuals in that, that understand that running that team, I just tip the scale on importance to the Bills. And this is a game that I think the Cowboys, of course, would love to win, but Cowboys fans, I think, could even live in a world where a close loss is not horrible. If they do get blown out, if that happens, which I believe it to be unlikely, I think this is truly a different Cowboys team than those years past, like you talked about, which was a very prevalent thing. I think this is finally one of those ones where even I, who still believe them to be somewhat of a fugazi in a way, they're not quite as fraud as what we've seen in years past. I think there's a little bit more of a completeness to this team. And also they live in reality. They don't live in dream world. That will be something that I feel like all previous Cowboys teams have. They just live somewhere else, it felt like. But they look at games in Miami as well, the game in Miami as well, as one that I think even they believe is more obtainable just based on location, situations where they're playing a team that they can definitely out physical. More so even, I think they can absolutely out physical the Bills, but the Bills are a tougher task just because Josh Allen, it's hard to out physical Josh Allen. 17 is more physical than your average linebacker in this league. So it's just one of those ones where I think the fans could even live in a world and not pile on to this team if they were to say lose by 4 points in Orchard Park in December time. Like it's a natural game where if it's competitive, if they still look good, if they leave it close, you can live with it. That's a tough environment here in Buffalo. It's a tough game at this situation, at this point in time where the Bills have everything in front of them that they need to win this game for. So it's not quite there for me when it comes to the Cowboys, but I do understand if others feel similar to you, because it's still something where now they finally sit above the Eagles at this current time and everything seems possible now. So therefore you want to jump on the opportunity as best as you can. You have to start this week in this game.
It feels like Cowboys chat, doesn't it? Like, I mean, we haven't yet to talk about the Bills injury report, what's going on with the Bills, but they're such a fascinating team. And it must be, we have a couple of mutual friends that are Cowboys fans, and they've let us know that it's actually exhausting being a Cowboys fan, because whether you win, whether you lose, whether you're good, whether you're bad, whether you have that high expectations or low expectations, your game is always talked about on national TV. And think about it from a Bills fan standpoint, like, when the Bills go out and they have the catastrophe against the Broncos, it's all over national TV. But if the Bills are bad and, they have a couple weeks in a row of being bad, the Bills are kind of off the radar. They aren't like forcing the Bills into the conversation. You can kind of come up for air and not worry about what Nick Wright or Stephen A. Smith has to say about your team. All right, Luke, I do want to talk about what kind of form the Bills are in, but real quick, I have a trivia question for you. I just put it out on our Twitter, so don't check Twitter. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be in Buffalo this weekend. Can you name the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys the last time they were in Buffalo?
The last time they were in Buffalo?
Mm-hmm. Orchard Park, Buffalo. It's not a trick question.
Yeah.
The last time they played here.
I got that. So obviously it would have to be, because the process would be 8 years ago. There wasn't any crazy skip like with the Cardinals that one time.
There's
right?
no international situation. There's no anything
okay.
like that bumped it back like 2 decades.
I always think about 2008 and 2012. The Cardinals somehow got the Bills in their house back-to-back times. Never understood it. Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, like logic would tell you it's Tony Romo, but I don't believe it to be Tony Romo. So I'm kind of stumped. If I'm picturing this right, is it no, I'm not doing math right. Yeah, I'm not doing math right. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I really can't think of it right now.
I'll give you one hint.
Okay.
The biggest story in the NFL today has kind of a lot to do with him in his new role.
Biggest story in the NFL today has to kind of it's not Kellen Moore, is it?
Ding, ding, ding.
Wow.
Kellen Moore started that game for the Cowboys. Tony Romo was hurt.
Yeah.
Let me get the
probably
game.
One of his many back injuries.
And before I get going, I actually put this out on Twitter, and I promised to shout out the person that got it right, since we're not able to interact with chat tonight.
Hey, look at that.
Okay. Scott Kaysen at S_Kaysen14 was the first one to get it right. Thank you to everybody who guessed. We had some Tony Romos, we had some Kyle Ortons in there. All those guesses make sense. Orton makes a lot of sense, but you know, why
Kyle
the
Orton's
Bills?
a good pull.
Yeah. So Scott Kaysen, he goes, glad spelling didn't count because he spelled it Kellon. It's okay if you don't know how to spell Kellen Moore's first name. Trust me, we will be just fine with that. And now, for whatever reason, I have lost the game log of that. So Bills Cowboys history. Okay, I'm going to pull that up here in a second. From I think that was 2017, perhaps. No, because the Bills would have played there, and they would have been 2015 because they played there in 2019
Correct.
on.
I was like, simple math.
16-6, the Bills win the game.
What
So
a game.
it was yeah, what a memorable game that was. Oh wow, this is a beauty. The Bills had a running back go 9 carries for 93 yards. Do you think you can pull who that guy is?
2015. So Carlos.
Great guess. No. Carlos was hurt.
Okay. It's not Booby, is it?
No, that's another great pull. This guy kind of became Carlos after Carlos left, and then like the new Carlos, and then he went on to become a Patriot.
I mean, if we're going past Carlos and Booby, I'll be honest, just to keep the show moving, I would have to really start throwing out names. So hit me with it.
Mike Gillislee.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I see. I knew you could have gotten there. That's why I was kind of letting you play around with it. Tyrod Taylor had a very Tyrod Taylor line, 13 of 18 for 179. Kellen Moore, 13 of 31, 150, 186, one interception. The leading rusher for the Cowboys was actually Darren McFadden, which that's interesting to me. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I know it feels like, did McFadden come before or after DeMarco Murray? I'm trying to remember. It doesn't matter.
Before.
Whatever. Before. DeMarco Murray took over for McFadden, and they're like, oh, this is way better. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Well, that was a fun trip down memory lane. Let's talk about the Bills, Luka, because Micah Hyde and AJ Epinesa were both ruled out for this game. Micah Hyde with, the stinger, AJ Epinesa with the rib injury. Sean McDermott calls them both week to week. AJ Epinesa has been having his best year as a Bill. I think that loss does hurt. It's so funny. I have to admit something out loud. I started cycling through like the Bills defensive ends, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that means Rousseau is going to play more than he already has, but it looks like he's coming back from his injury better. I think Rousseau had a really strong game last week. Leonard Floyd will obviously be out there, and I'm like, well, then Von Miller's up. And at that point, it's Kingsley Jonathan. Like, I just totally forgot Shaq Lawson was on the team for like a 30-minute span today until I was cycling through my head. I'm like, oh yeah, Shaq Lawson's here. Tells you what kind of seasons he's been having. And then Micah Hyde being out, to me, I'm totally okay with that one because I want to make sure his neck is right. Obviously, that's the most important thing. But two, I do think the Bills have some sneaky good depth there with Taylor Rapp. I'm a big Cam Lewis guy. Outside of that, though, the only injury designations for this team are guys that aren't even on the active roster right now, and Kyer Elam and Justin Shorter. So the Bills are in good shape. There was a Dalton Kincaid scare this week, but he doesn't even have an injury designation. He's good to go. Feels like for the first time in a while, Micah Hyde notwithstanding, AJ Epinesa notwithstanding, the Bills are finally able to kind of come up for air with these injuries, where early in the year it was like, get one back, lose 3, get one back, lose 4. The Bills finally seem like they're able to like put their team out there every week. And boy, is that important.
Yeah, health is always important. It's the one thing that can hopefully get luck back on your side, because it's not all skill that you need in order to win a championship. That's just not how it works. If it was all skill, you just buy the best and most skillful players, and that team would inevitably win. You need luck. You need the ball to bounce your way, and you need injuries to happen lesser, or at least to get healthy as the games become more and more important. So it does feel nice. It will be interesting to see kind of how they handle the safety position now. Like, are they just going to truly hand it right back over to Taylor Rapp with then to be paired with Jordan Poyer? Is there maybe going to be a little bit of a committee response to that, where you do see some Cam Lewis situation subbed in, depending on what it is that they're trying to achieve on defense, so on and so forth. But outside of that, you need to be healthy. And if you want to even have a chance in this game, you need to be healthy, especially as much as possible, because the Cowboys, in all respect to them, do have a plethora of quality players, and they don't really have a health issue themselves. So other than Trayvon Diggs being out for the year, which has been there for a while and stuff like that,
Mhm.
the Bills have their own varieties of those, of course, is also, and all teams do. Outside of those, the Cowboys are very healthy, and a lot of their impact players are still there and healthy and ready to go, especially with, the respective lines, both defensive and offensive. So you need to have all your other pieces there to kind of neutralize or at least do whatever they do best to kind of equal the playing field once more. So you need that to get the luck. You need that to be at your high skill point. And the Bills do feel kind of like in a position outside of a couple right now that they're dealing with that they are getting better or back to a more healthy place.
I will tell you, when you look at this Cowboys defense, there was a scare earlier in this week that Malik Hooker, some of you who follow the draft closely might remember him and think, wait, wasn't he a former first round pick of the Colts that kind of washed out? He was, but man, he is kind of resurrecting his career in Dallas as that deep third, middle of the field safety. And he is big, and he missed a couple practices early in the week, but he is questionable. Mike McCarthy sounded today optimistic he'd be good to go. You mentioned Trayvon Diggs. That's obviously a big one, but holy cow, have the Cowboys struck gold with Deron Bland, who is going to get multiple Pro Bowl votes because he has what now, 6 pick sixes or 5 pick sixes. It's
I think it's
insane.
5.
Former Bills first round pick Stephon Gilmore, one of my favorite players in the league, is the other cornerback. He's still playing at a very high level. PFF has him graded as the 21st best cornerback in the league. He did a fantastic job last week shutting down AJ Brown. But Luka, the one place you can get rich on these Cowboys is attacking their slot corner, Jordan Lewis. And I think what'll be interesting to see is how the Bills approach this, because there's multiple ways they could do this. One, they could just kind of come out in 11 and see what Khalil Shakir has. I think you'll see somewhat of a heavy dose of that. They could go in 12 and say, okay, Jordan Lewis, let's see what you can do with Dalton Kincaid. I don't think Dallas has the best coverage linebackers in the sport, and I think that their safeties are kind of okay. I think you can get them with a tight end. I do expect Kincaid to have a pretty decent game. The last thing they could do, we've talked about this several times in previewing this game, is they could move Diggs to the slot, because as good as Stephon Gilmore and Bland have been, neither one of them really cover the slot at all. Bland has played there just shy of 20% of the snaps this season, but I think that was probably more so in a backup role prior to when Diggs got hurt. Stephon Gilmore almost never goes to the slot. He has almost 700 snaps this season, just shy of 60 in the slot. So they do not trail, and maybe they would change their approach with Diggs, because the Bills are one of those teams where it is a, here's your 1A and there is a drop off after that. So maybe they pay more attention to him. I could see the Bills doing that. But between, the plethora of Shakir, Hardy, Sherfield, if you want them, I really don't. Kincaid coming in 12, moving Diggs around. Do you expect Jordan Lewis to be the one that the Bills try to target in the passing game? And how do you expect them to go about doing that?
I do. I think the inside the numbers approach is definitely one that they're going to kind of highlight in this game. It would make sense. I will say, with all the flowers and everything that everyone gives to Deron Bland, it's historic what he's done. He has been very, solid in a lot of different games. When you really kind of dive deep a little bit, though, PFF, grain of salt, and it does feel like you question some of their ratings this year more so than ever before. He's had incredible games against the Giants, the Panthers, the Patriots, games like that where you're like, okay, well, who is he playing? Then you look at it and you look at the games like against the Chargers, which the Cowboys won and looked decent on defense overall. They held the Chargers to, I believe it was 17 points. He had a 44 coverage grade. Against the Seahawks, Geno Smith's not a world beater, but he can at least run an efficient offense, a 45 grade. Last week, in a game where it seems like they won handedly and everything was going well, a 66 coverage grade. I do believe that Deron Bland is still easily attackable. I think he's an individual where it's like, you just can't be lazy, slow. You can't have a long throwing motion, which Josh Allen, he doesn't have a slow throwing motion. So I'm just completely taking that out of this variable here. But you can't be indecisive against him, because once you hitch for that split second, that's where it seems like he capitalizes. All these pick sixes he is getting, if you really watch them, like the Sam Howell one always keeps coming to mind. I think that was the last one he's had. Sam Howell, one, decently long throwing motion, but two, he really waits on throwing that ball. And it's like, yeah, I feel like, no disrespect to Bland, because Bland, you have to still attack it. You have to have the instinct to do what he did. But on top of it, like, I feel like your above average NFL corner would be at least intercepting that ball. And then it's open field in front of him where he's able to house it. And all respect to him, it's a phenomenal season for him. I just don't believe it's a world beater there. And then, kind of in this conversation, if I were the Cowboys and if I were Dan Quinn, I would be trying to probably slide Gilmore on the side of Diggs as much as possible because of that. Like, you have to understand what you actually have. And as good of a year as Bland is having, he can still get beat. And he's shown that he can get beat. And it's not like he is truly a shutdown guy. So you want your actual shutdown guy shutting down the clear and decisive weapon that the Bills have to offer on the perimeter, being Stephon Diggs. So then, counterpointing it, pulling it back to the Bills, why not just attack everywhere else in between the numbers? Because that's ultimately where you will not find Stephon Gilmore, as you pointed out. You are not even going to find the high opportune corner in Deron Bland camping around there. And then, as you said, you have Hooker, or they even just kind of run in their base package because they want to have Lawrence and Parsons on the edge. And then you just naturally have that mismatch outside in that slot area because no one's truly lined up against him anymore unless they bring down a safety or bring out a linebacker wide, which just opens up another world of possibilities. So that truly does seem where the chess match should be had for the Bills against the Cowboys. It's one of those things where, based on look, packages, and everything you see on the defensive side, ultimately it does feel like a game where they can win it inside the numbers, everything like that, with more production out of James Cook in the backfield, so on and so forth. And that is kind of what I hold the hope onto, because that's a piece of their game in the offense that's been working extremely well since Joe Brady's been here, or Joe Brady. Yeah, it just,
Yeah,
since the
you
off,
said.
yeah, I know I said that. I just wanted to be like, since the offense got handed over to an
Yeah.
individual that is no longer restricting it,
Mhm.
whether that's Joe Brady's credit or it's just finally a fresh voice in the conversation, so be it. I just, all respect to Joe Brady as well. I just think it's finally someone not getting in the way and just recognizing where talent is actually on this offense and doing something about it. That's my point with that. I'm not disrespecting Joe Brady when I kind of pulled back on that one, but regardless, that does feel like the place that gives me confidence that the Bills can be productive on offense and ultimately try to attack to win this game.
It's funny. I know we both really respect Dan Orlovsky and his opinions, and he was on One Bills Live, and they're like, "Well, what can the Bills do against this elite defense?" And Dan Orlovsky kind of paused, and he's like, "Are they an elite defense? I think they're an elite front." But I think that they're kind of an average back seven. And that goes into a lot what you said about Bland. And I think Joe Marino echoed that on his podcast. He said he gets his pick sixes because boy does he earn them. He gets jumpy. You can get him with double moves. I kind of like Gabe Davis matched up on him because we know Gabe Davis is going to go deep anyway. So it's not like you're going to get Gabe Davis on those routes that are susceptible to pick sixes. Let's see if he can run down the field and run with Gabe Davis on those routes that he and Josh Allen are generally pretty locked in on. And as much respect as I have for Stephon Gilmore, he is one of my favorite Bills of all time. Even though he left the team, even though he went to the nasty Patriots, I just love the player. I don't know that if at this stage of his career I would fear him guarding Diggs, even though I think a lot of people think Diggs is having a down year. I think Diggs can get open on pretty much anybody, and I would put Gilmore on that list as well. It's funny, Bland actually is kind of like what Trayvon Diggs was a year or two ago, where it was like you had the sizzle, but you didn't necessarily have like the sustainability. All right. Micah Parsons, like we can't not have a Cowboys preview show without mentioning him. I'll just say quickly, it's not like we need to sit here and be like, boy, Deion Dawkins needs to play his best or Spencer Brown needs to play his best. Really, Mitch Morse needs to play his best because every single play, Mitch Morse needs to figure out where Micah Parsons is, who's going to be responsible for blocking him. Chances are it's going to be more than one Bill. He rushes every single gap. He's gonna be a headache for every single Bills offensive lineman. Luka, I don't want to get out of here without giving you a chance to talk glowingly about him. He is as special of a defensive player as I can remember seeing come into this league in quite some time.
He is the most unique, dominant defensive player I can ever recall seeing. And it's funny, Micah Parsons kind of came out of a place where, even with the college football I'd watch with him at Penn State, I couldn't even in this world projected what that is. When we saw kind of the Myles Garrett, which is kind of, it's ironic because Myles Garrett was truly what I expected in what we see in Micah Parsons. I expected Myles Garrett to kind of take the NFL by storm, be that real, true, unique defensive weapon, which Myles Garrett is still a defensive player of the year candidate. He could quite literally win that award this year. And I would not be surprised at all. He's been having a dominant year. It's just Micah Parsons is a true defensive weapon. I mean, he is just, he can play anything in that front seven if you ultimately need him to, and he can do it at an all-pro level. It doesn't matter where he lines up in that box. He will be the best player sitting in that box. Like, he is incredible. He's a freak. And as you said, this truly is going to be a Mitch Morse game, because yes, you have to find where number 11 is across from you, but then also account for number 97 and 90 being Dexter Lawrence. And I'm not even going to begin to pronunciate his name. Osa, last name.
Very good. And DeMarcus Lawrence. Yeah. But Dexter, he's on the brain too, but DeMarcus.
Sorry. DeMarcus Lawrence. Yeah. Dexter Lawrence. God.
But that defensive tackle you mentioned, he's not a household name, but holy cow, his metrics this year are unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. Like, Osa, again, last name, whatever it is. I, again, can't even begin to try to pronunciate it. They are three absolute beasts. Like, they are, you need to account for them. You need to see where they are at all times, if they're on the field and where they are on the field, because that is the true game wrecker for the Dallas Cowboys. That's truly all they need to wreck any game. Those three individuals on the field at the same time, just handling their business, is a handful for even the best offensive lines in this league, let alone the Bills, who have still had a decent year on the offensive line, but they're not exactly what we'll call a top 5 offensive line. So Mitch Morse needs to always make sure those 5 guys plus whoever else is chipping in, whether it's the running back, obviously you relay that information to Allen, and Allen also adjusts the tight ends, whatever it is. Everyone needs to account with what's going on in the box, which then kind of leads back into that point where we talked about the receiving game. The game is going to be won and lost in between the numbers. That is truly where this game lies. It's in the trenches and in between the numbers. As long as you can account for whatever's going on in that section of the field, you will put yourself in the best position to succeed if you are the Bills.
I do wonder if maybe we see a downtick in James Cook snaps this year. And I know, or this week, and I know that sounds weird because he's such a good weapon, but the priority this week for the Bills very much could be a back that understands the pass protection. The Cowboys are going to throw unique looks at you anyway. They blitz about 30%, which is up in the upper portion of the league. And then Micah Parsons, obviously that joker. You wonder if maybe Latavius Murray, or maybe this is a spot where you activate a guy like Leonard Fournette, who may not have the juice of a guy like a Ty Johnson, but he has made a career out of being a very, very reliable pass protector. Just something to think about. I wouldn't necessarily anticipate Floyd or Fournette being activated, but just one of the things I'm thinking about here. And, just to piggyback on what you said about how unique Micah Parsons is, in a lot of ways, he's like the Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen of defensive players, where we always talk about the dual threat. Like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson can beat you from the pocket. They can throw with the best of them in the league, but when they have the ball in their hands, they're as dangerous as a running back or a wide receiver in the open field. And that's exactly what Parsons is. He can rush the passer like a Myles Garrett, but then you put him back in coverage, and outside of Fred Warner, he might be one of the best in the league at covering people too. It is an absolute unicorn of a player. He's a joy to watch, and thank goodness the Bills only have to see him once every 4 years, unless they see him in the Super Bowl, which would be a good problem to have. Spin it around quickly, talk about the Cowboys offense. Luka, let's just talk quickly about CeeDee Lamb. I think he's evolved into one of the best weapons in the sport. Brandon Cooks, to me, is kind of a bigger name Gabe Davis at this point. Like he does more in the route tree, but he gets you deep because of how much attention you're paying to CeeDee Lamb. I don't think Michael Gallup is the player he was even a couple years ago. You can tell injuries have kind of taken a toll on him. They have some fun guys lower on their depth chart. Like I was high on Jalen Tolbert coming in, but he's not somebody that you really fear in this matchup. Their tight end Ferguson's a fun player, but he's more of like a reliable, I'm going to catch the underneath stuff, just like Schultz did for them. And then Tony Pollard is not a special running back. There was at one point people thought that he could be, but he seems like he's lost some speed this year, which is a shame because it was a chance for him to really make some money. CeeDee Lamb, though, where would you rank him in the upper echelon of wide receivers?
He's not in my top 5, but
really?
he's absolutely,
okay.
Yeah, he's not. I think this year has finally catapulted him into being a welcome discussion on where he is actually. It does feel like this season's kind of finally that breakout, which in wide receiver terms feels a little bit late, which is crazy and unfair to some of those players that do take a few seasons to get comfortable. But overall, the problem is even though health has been an issue, Justin Jefferson's still in that conversation easily. AJ Brown is still in that conversation easily. Tyreek Hill is still, of course, in that conversation.
Top of the
And now you already just took 3 of those 5 spots. So it's not because CD Lamb isn't an exceptional receiver that he isn't top 5 in this league. It's just there are still those world beaters, those absolute game wreckers that you have there that I would still put above him. You know, even your Jamar Chase, where it's just a little bit more of a complete player that can do a lot more things. I think CD Lamb, though, fits this offense to an absolute perfect T. Like, it is perfect. It's almost beautiful symphonic poetry when you watch CD Lamb in deep shots, because his skill and abilities combined with the playmaking and what is happening is it just meshes so well that when you watch Dak drop back and ultimately cock back to then throw that ball, you know it's probably CD down deep somewhere. Occasionally it is Brandon Cooks, of course, but normally it's CD. When you watch the all 22 or you watch the replay of it all, it's just beautiful. He runs the perfect route. He understands leverage absolutely perfectly. And then next thing you know, on just a simple deep crosser, which then he turned up the field, he turned what was 1 yard of separation into 4 or 5 just by exactly when he made the certain movements that he did. And he is elite. He's a reliable set of hands with great speed, understands what his job is on every play of time. He doesn't take plays off, of course. He does everything so well that, you know, he's going to be an absolute handful. And he is respected in the league, in my mind, enough where you have to accept that he's going to get some plays on you. You just hope to mitigate and kind of make sure you rein in those bigger, later in the game plays that it does seem like he gets with the Cowboys week in, week out. He gets them. Those big plays he gets are either the early design plays that are clear, you know, they worked on them all week and that's just when they want to attack, or then later on when they had been trying to set something up the entire game, which is another thing the Cowboys do extremely well, setting certain looks and plays up to then hit you over the top. That's a Mike McCarthy thing, like always. It's going back to his Green Bay days that you definitely have to worry about with CD. And if you can mitigate those, you can limit those kinds of big plays from those. I think CD can at least be reined in where he doesn't absolutely destroy you at the end.
All right, Luka, let's get into it. Let's get our predictions going. If you're watching along in chat, please let us know how you feel. Again, we apologize for not being able to interact with chat tonight. We'll be back doing that. So next week, the 7-6 Buffalo Bills take on the 10-3 Dallas Cowboys. Vegas has this at either the Bills favored by 1.5 or 2. Luka, when you give your prediction, if you want to give a quick thought on why you think that is, because I think that caught some people off guard this week to see the Bills favored. The over-under in this game is 50.5. Last I checked. Luka, who wins this showdown?
I've really had a tough time kind of thinking about this game a little bit. It's been one where I will say when the betting line came out and the Bills were favored, I believe opening line for it. Let me just triple check this real quick. Opening line was 2 points. So when I saw that, it was just like, okay, so they truly believe this to kind of be a coin flip game. Because the edge, they're just doing the traditional edge in a sense of being that the Bills are the home team. I was surprised to not see the overreaction to a dominant Cowboys win and then kind of the Bills, quote unquote, scraping by in Kansas City. But also at the same time, Vegas loves the Bills. So it shouldn't be an overall surprise. It's just the nature of the beast. You see a lot of tickets coming in on the Cowboys, and I can fully understand that. That's a thing that you would imagine after the games we saw last week that should be there. Where I think the game will ultimately be won is, as I kept saying, in between the numbers. And it's one where I just don't believe that this Cowboys offense can actually get it done in crunch time on the road in Buffalo. I just don't see, as much as I do believe Dak can be that guy to get it done. If it's Dak Prescott in a 2-minute drill, which the Bills seem to find themselves in a lot this season,
Almost
opposing
every
quarterback,
week.
2-minute drill, no timeouts. It seems to be a weekly occurrence here.
Because Sean
Dak
McDermott
Prescott,
burns one for strategy.
right? Dak Prescott isn't quite Patrick Mahomes, who didn't even get it done in his own right. There are a lot of outlying factors for that reason, because they absolutely had the opportunity. But then, it was Russell Wilson, thanks to a PI, that got it done. It took kind of a crazy halfback screenplay for a Mac Jones team to get it done. Situations like that where Dak Prescott he's not as bad as what I believe a Russell Wilson or a Mac Jones to believe, but I just don't think he's quite good enough that in Orchard Park, he will get that done. So at the end of the day, I just think that the Bills defense has still been very good in their own right, especially considering all injuries, and they will be able to neutralize a little bit of those big plays that McDermott's always known for kind of making sure is taken care of. I think Rasul Douglas, I will expect him to have a big game against the CeeDee Lamb, and the Bills offense will be able to kind of figure out a way to make Josh Allen still get a couple big plays, even against a great pass rush that they have. Give me the Buffalo Bills to win this game. And I genuinely cannot believe I got to this point, because I really thought the Cowboys would win this game. I'll just be quite frank. I think even the preseason, I picked the Cowboys to win this game. No, actually, sorry. Quite opposite. I picked Mike McCarthy to get fired after this game.
That's true. Yeah.
I just wanted to, I actually fully knew that, Josh, just for the record. Everyone listening, I fully knew what I did. I just wanted to bring that up. I did think that it's a bad take on my part. The Cowboys figured it out.
Happens. We're allowed to be wrong. Look at the national guys.
But I do believe the Bills win this game. I think they will be able to kind of get it done. I think the Cowboys, they're not full fugazis, but they're road fugazis. They're partial fugazis. This is one where they might come back to earth after a big, big win last week. And the Bills are going to try to continue this momentum that they have. I will take the Bills 27-17.
Ooh, 10-point win for the Bills. Okay, well, I like a few matchups in this game for the Bills. I like a few matchups in this game for the Cowboys. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb on Rasul Douglas. I think CeeDee Lamb might see a lot of Taron Johnson, but it's going to be a zone coverage defense. We all know that. So everybody's going to have their hand in the cookie jar. I think Rasul Douglas has a chance to get a pick this week. He's the one you would pick on defense to do that. I am curious to see how the Bills overcome the Micah Hyde injury. I would expect to see a heavy dose of Taylor Rapp at safety, and you still see Jordan Poyer come down and play dime linebacker in certain situations with Cam Lewis going back there. And then DeMar Hamlin should be activated for this game. That's going to be kind of cool. I am interested to see how much the Hankins injury hurts the Cowboys. We mentioned how good they are up front, but how much of that is because of that nose tackle? I think we will find out, because Mozzie Smith is a rookie, has not had a very strong rookie year. He was picked one pick after Dalton Kincaid, when many speculated that Dalton Kincaid was the apple of the Cowboys' eye. And Brandon Beane has admitted that the reason he traded up over Dallas is because he wanted Kincaid and he thought they were going to take him. Interesting dynamic there. I would like to see the Bills press and see how Mozzie Smith can fill in at nose tackle, see the impact it has on the Micah Parsons, the Lawrences, the defensive tackle that we're not going to try to pronounce his name, but we both admit is excellent. I want to see James Cook get a steady diet of runs up the middle to the edge. Can this Cowboys team defend that? Get Josh Allen under center, get Josh Allen running play action, continue running a lot of motion. That is one area the Cowboys defense struggles. Cowboys offense, as good as they are, tend to be average at converting red zone possessions to touchdowns. They have an excellent kicker. That's great. I'm excited every time that kicker comes on the field on Sunday, because it means they haven't scored a touchdown. I'd love to see him miss his first one. Hopefully we can jinx him. I have the Bills, desperation on their side. I think this is a big Diggs game. I think, motivation, you hate to project that, but he knows he's going against his brother's team. In a lot of ways, I think there's a chance he's going against the team that he kind of wishes he played for, because he wants to play with his brother, whatever. He knows it's a spotlight game. Diggs usually gets up big for these spotlight games. I think Diggs is probably hearing the noise about the concerns. I think there's a concentrated effort this week by everybody in that building to get Diggs involved. You saw the shot of Diggs and Allen walking off the field at Arrowhead last week. Allen whispered something to him, and Diggs just said, "Hey, we'll get it figured out. We'll get it figured out. Keep chopping wood." Felt to me like Allen was kind of expressing frustration over their lack of ability to get those two going. And Diggs was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We won the game." But I think Diggs is due for a big Diggs game coming up soon. I don't think Gabe Davis gets blanked. I know, bold prediction. I do think Dalton Kincaid has a big game. And I think that the Bills win this game 28-23. So, Luka, those are our predictions for the Bills. And that's going to kind of put a bow on our Bills Cowboys coverage. But we are now going to turn our attention to what has become the talk of all of sports and entertainment. It is Luka's locks. Now, your record on the year is 19-23, but You are coming back strong. You were 1-2 last week. Is that right?
Yes, hit the
That's a
2 unit emphatically. Thank you,
Mhm.
Denver, for. I should have done the money line. I said I loved the money line, but I just give me the points if you're going to give them to me. That was the easiest thing ever. Easton Stick, as great of a hockey item that might be, not a great quarterback. We found out, and then we found it out even more so on Thursday night. But yes, 1-2 didn't get our 1 unit plays, but we did hit the 2 units, so we mitigated or limited the losses to a total of negative point. What was it? 0.07 units in total. So we're back. We're trying to get back to 500 on the record. We're trying to get back to positive units. We still have now the fourth quarter of the NFL season to go.
All right. Well, 19-23 on the season, but I believe in you. I think you're going to get over 500, and it's going to start with a game in Cleveland against Joe Flacco in 2023. Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns being favored by 3 points over the Chicago Bears. Luka, how do you see that game going?
This was a fun one. This was a fun one to do. I will say this week was a fun one to do. I truly didn't know that I would find myself in week 15 of the NFL season going down a path where I would be choosing between the Cleveland Browns and the Chicago Bears, especially considering in this world, we have the Browns on their fourth string quarterback. That is Joe Flacco somehow off the couch and in the starting role for the Browns. I almost said the Bears. Jeez. This is a game where I really didn't think I was going to be going this route. I will say the injury report for the Cleveland Browns did come out today, and they actually will have one of the offensive guards that looked like maybe could have been missing after not practicing Wednesday and Thursday. Was a full participant, that being Joel Bitonio, however you pronunciate it. But overall, I think the Cleveland Browns have been playing really, really well. I think they've been looking surprisingly good with Joe Flacco under center in these past 2 games, being the Rams game. And then last week was, why am I blanking? It doesn't matter. He looked good. This is kind of a letdown spot because the Bears you can easily overlook, but have been very, very good on defense. They've looked surprisingly good the past few weeks. They've had the bye sprinkled in there, but they've been a very stout defense, and they're riding a little bit of a high after beating the Lions in pretty decent fashion, where they now are actually kind of looking down the barrel of playoffs being a discussion in Chicago. Whether that actually happens or not, of course, seems like a long shot, but it's a world they can actually live in. They're in the hunt graphic.
Mhm.
They're there for legitimate reason. So therefore, with that and kind of a little bit of a letdown spot for the Browns, where Joe Flacco might kind of let it loose a little bit more than he should, maybe have a little bit more pressure on him unexpectedly, and he needs that clean pocket to operate. I actually like the Chicago Bears +3 in Cleveland. It's a crazy thing where in a million years, I would have never predicted myself putting money on the Bears as short dogs on the road. But yeah, there is just something about this game. When you really look at it, it doesn't quite make sense. But at the end of the day, I really do like my money a lot on the Bears to just cover that 3 points. It could be a close game. I expect it to be a close game. So give me the dog in that case.
I I don't think it's as wild as I think maybe you're kind of feeling like it is because I mean, okay, the Browns have been impressive. You're right. They looked good last week against Jacksonville. And, Trevor Lawrence was not 100%. It was clear as day. And they did lose the Rams game, but to me the larger point is one, the Bears have a talented young quarterback that's still trying to find his way and really playing for his career at this point. But the larger point to me is like, yeah, Joe Flacco's looked good these last two weeks, but we have 6 years worth of data since Joe Flacco's really been good. Like the end of Baltimore, Denver, the Jets, Joe Flacco's been a tire fire since he left Baltimore and even the last year in Baltimore when Lamar Jackson took his job. So I understand they're excited. He comes in, kind of catches maybe the Jaguars and the Rams off guard, and good for him. I mean, hey, he got $4 million out of it. And for Cleveland fans, that's exciting. I think it's totally within the realm of possibilities that the real Joe Flacco stands up this week. And we're looking at it like, how the heck was Joe Flacco favored by 3 points over anybody in 2023? So I don't hate that prediction at all. Game number 2, Luka, takes us to a big one when it comes to AFC wildcard standings. The Indianapolis Colts at home will welcome in the Pittsburgh Steelers and still Mitch Trubisky. The Colts are favored by 1.5 points. How do you see this game going?
I'll keep this short and sweet. I did go out of play order. I always try to keep play order in mind. We go back to Saturday now, tomorrow's game. So
Okay.
this will be posted. If you're watching the individual video, first and foremost, appreciate you. But secondly, we got to get this one right out after this live episode because this is a Saturday game. This is a Saturday afternoon game. And I just cannot believe the line opened up for this game, Josh. The line itself, when it opened, was 2.5 for Colts being the favorite and has moved down to 1.5. And when you just, this is a don't overthink it game. And I'm not going to be long-winded with this, what I like about this game. The Colts, who are coming off a bad loss against the Jake Browning Bengals, now have a game where if they truly want to make the playoffs, they need to make sure they win this game. They're at home. I think they're a better team at home, like most average teams are. You want to play at home. They are generally a much more productive offense at home because they're in a controlled environment. And then you're welcoming a team that just couldn't even manage their own game at home against a lowly Patriots team that was Bailey Zappi at the helm. So yeah, just don't overthink it. This is the Colts minus 1.5 at home against the Steelers. I don't know how the Steelers are going to be able to do anything with Mitch Trubisky in Indianapolis against a team that actually needs to win this game, both because of the opponent they're playing with playoff implications, but then also just be taken seriously in the AFC picture as a whole. So the Colts have much more to play for, in my mind, that they can actually achieve rather than the Steelers, who kind of feel like they're holding onto a playoff spot by a thin piece of thread. And inevitably, Gardner Minshew is going to hold those scissors that cuts it and lets it free fall to the ground because the Steelers they don't have it this year. I don't see anything that I like about them, and I'm just not going to overthink this. Give me the Colts minus 1.5 at home against the Steelers.
Yeah, when I saw that line, boy, did it jump out to me because I felt like the Colts are a better team. I think Gardner Minshew is better than any quarterback on the Steelers roster, not just Mitch Trubisky, but Kenny Pickett. I would trust Gardner Minshew over any of those guys to win me one game. And just as an aside, boy, is Michael Pittman going to get paid this offseason. He has had a nice season. He's going to get all the money that a lot of people thought Gabe Davis was going to get. That is good for him. I will say the one thing on this that gives me pause because everything about it, I'm right. I'm with you. It screams, what the heck? Just take the Colts. Don't overthink it. There is the Mike Tomlin factor. He has a career out of going into situations where you think his team has no chance and just going into that game and just finding a way to win just the ugliest Steeler type game. And it's boring and you have no interest in watching the highlights. But at the end, the Steelers win like some 12-10 game and Tomlin somehow keeps the Steelers at or above 500. But I'm with you. I can't go off of that for a prediction. I think everything about the Colts are better. Maybe the extended rest the Steelers have since last Thursday night is why that line is ticking toward them. But I think that's free money if you want to take it. The third game, Luka, has us going to, I don't have a home for this one. This one's in LA.
This is in Los Angeles.
Yeah, okay. The LA Rams play host to the Washington Commanders, and they are a 6-point favorite. How do you see this game going down?
This is a weird one because the Commanders are coming off a bye. I don't generally like to bet games where one team is coming off a bye unless there's an absolute reason you must pick a side in that game. The slate is one where I do think there's some traps elsewhere in this slate that, for instance, Kansas City minus 8.5. That feels like free money. But at the same time, in a world now where reports coming out that the New England Patriots are inevitably, it's already been decided that Bill Belichick's going to walk away. If that's even true, Bill Belichick's going to coach his ass off to try to steal one like that, to kind of just show that he is still the guy and what a time to do it on the lowly Chiefs right now. So that's not free money. And there's other things, so on and so forth. I looked at this game. This line hasn't moved effectively all week. Just looking at it over here, it opened at 7, the Rams being 7-point favorites. It is technically Rams 6.5. And if anything, that tickled my fancy a little bit more. Well, now you're giving me the touchdown hook. You're giving me 6.5. So why hasn't it moved any more so? You have Brian Robinson, who had a hamstring injury previous to their bye and has come through, could not practice all week, and is already ruled out for this week. That is their lead running back. They kind of are banged up at a couple other spots, but really overall not banged up too much. But neither are the Rams. So now you're just asking me which team is in a better position right now. Well, it's the one that's clearly in a competition to get a wild card spot, being the Rams itself. They're at home. I don't think Washington is the type of team that can kind of capitalize anywhere with what Ram deficiencies there are. And after the Rams lost a heartbreaker to a very good team that they could have won that game in Baltimore, I expect them to come back and absolutely thrash the Commanders and show that, yes, that midseason stretch where they looked really, really bad was something that you should, just kind of ignore at this point, because this team is getting back to health. Puka Nacua is somehow playing through an AC joint sprain, and I just don't understand that whatsoever. He could barely walk off the field when he suffered it, but then came back in that same game. And then even last week in Baltimore was making sweet diving catches. Like, this guy is a machine. And then with Cooper Kupp getting more and more healthy as the year progresses, Kerwin Williams is, of course, doing his thing in the backfield, which an LA Rams offense under Sean McVay runs through the running back. That's always what it is. It's always what it will be. All of those pieces are there. And the Washington Commanders defense is dog water. So, yeah, give me the Rams -6.5. I can easily see this being a double-digit win for the Rams. So if you're telling me I can have a touchdown hook on my side, I will absolutely take it with 2 units.
I love that pick. I think that the Rams have been held back for a couple of reasons this year. One, injuries to Cooper Kupp, injuries to Nakua, injuries to Stafford, even injuries to Kyron Williams. But two, they have such a bad offensive line right now that if they play a team that can pressure them, it really neutralizes their offense that does have a lot of riches in weapons. Well, welcome the Commanders, who can't pressure anybody because they spent the trade deadline trading away Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And if you remember back to our week 3 episode, we talked all about how awful their secondary is. So I think Matthew Stafford will have time, and I don't think there's anybody in this Commanders secondary that can cover anybody on this Rams receiving group. So I like this pick a lot. I think the Rams have a real opportunity to roll in this game. So to recap the week 15's Luka's locks, we have the Bears +3 at Cleveland. We have the Colts tomorrow, by the way, -1.5 at home against the Steelers. And we have the Rams -6.5 hosting the Washington Commanders. And that will do it for this week's edition of Luka's Locks. All right, Luka, any final thoughts on anything we talked about tonight? It's funny, like I can't go more than an hour, and here we are at an hour and 12 minutes.
It's
I
always
think
how
we
it works.
covered a lot on the Cowboys. Look, I'll just tell you this. I think there's some debate. The Bills can lose this game and win out, and I would still predict that they make the playoffs. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think they need to win out if they lose this game, but that's within the realm of possibilities. But boy, oh boy, are they in great shape, Luka, if they win this game. Because the next 2 games, I know we've seen this team lose to the Patriots, saw them lose to Zach Wilson, but I mean, you can't ask for 2 softer landing spots than Easton Stick and the tire fire that's the Chargers. I know they're going to get the boost from firing the coach, whatever. If you lose the Easton Stick to not make the playoffs, then we can have a whole other conversation. And then that same Patriots team, boy, it really does feel like the Bills can erase a lot of the negativity that happened early in this year with back-to-back wins over the Chiefs and now the Cowboys.
Quite simply, the Bills in front of them right now have an opportunity to create the momentum they need that can hopefully accelerate them into the postseason and truly be that team that no one wants to play because they are as hot as hell. They've kind of gone to the depths of losing and somehow recovered from that and have built on that to become a juggernaut that we believe they can be at their peak, and then behind 17 make a run for it. And this is the building block that truly is the last one that could potentially cause them a trip up. And I'm with you 100%. If they were to lose this game, it's not the end of the world, but what it could mean to win this game is everything. Like, this truly could be that win that then you do propel yourself into a matchup in LA where you play the Eastern Synergy, also known as Stick, at quarterback. And we saw what that is. And that is not anything that you should fear on Thursday Night Football against the Raiders, a team that couldn't put up a single point and only it was just wow, just what a performance that we saw out of Easton
It was
Synergy, also
something.
known as Stick. I just love for a guy that has an incredible name that you could do
Mhm.
so many hockey puns with and stuff, it really is a shame that he sucks as much as he does. I just will say, like, boy, would I want to love him so much just strictly because of his name. Anyways, you have him, you have the Patriots at home, which hopefully you should be able to take care of business and take them seriously, all things considered with what happened earlier in the season. And you set up a beautiful situation if you win this game this week, where that week 18 game against Miami truly could be one that is absolutely special for this team, special for the conference, and all eyes will be on it because the Dolphins need to get through extremely tough games in their own. Next week against these same Cowboys in their own house, but then also on the road to play the Ravens, who have at that point in time probably looking at that win clinches them the top seed. And that, of course, they're going to ball all out for, because the top seed in an AFC conference at this point in time is absolutely everything. So it's just one of those things where it's all in front of them, and a win here just propels them. I love the playoff predictor showing that just simply winning this game, regardless of all other results, puts them at a 70% position to just go down the road and take care of business of making the playoffs. And then division, of course, is very much on the table. Then it's everything. The world cannot be lost with a loss, but everything can be gained with a win. And that is a great spot to be, all things considered, especially with how things were after that Monday night Broncos game. That was absolutely a funeral at the time.
This time last week, the Bills had not beaten the Chiefs. The Dolphins had not choked. I mean, I say choked. The Titans absolutely outplayed them, and they almost choked away the game, but then managed to come back and win in hilarious fashion. Those two results, I think, have revived an entire fan base. And boy, if the Bills beat the Cowboys this week, it is pedal to the metal. I think the Jets are live this week in Miami off of a short week. Tyreek Hill has yet to practice. It is Friday evening, by the way. Interesting, very interesting. There was one more conversation I wanted to have tonight, Luka, but I'm making the choice not to have that. I think we should save it for after the game. It's when, if Josh Allen has a big performance, does he find himself back in that MVP conversation? We're not going to talk about that right now because I feel like there's a pretty good chance we're going to have that conversation on the post-game show, which you can find Monday morning anywhere your podcast can be found. Spotify, Google, wherever, YouTube.
Apple.
If you want Apple, thank you. What a Google podcast. That's one of those. So
They
my
do.
wife,
It does exist, but I think Apple's a little bit bigger.
I know Google exists because my wife and I share a Spotify account. And if I'm ever trying to listen to something and she's like, I'm on Spotify, I'm like, damn it, I'll go to Google Podcasts. Probably should just go to Apple. Anyway, but I think that conversation is going to be fun to have. Luka and I'll be back here next week. Actually, it will just be me and maybe a fill-in because Luka has some family stuff. Speaking of family, hey, it is that time of year. Happy holidays to all of you out there, whatever you're celebrating this time of year. And, my heart goes out to anybody that maybe struggles with this time of year. Just for those that don't know, I lost my dad on Easter Sunday. So that holiday for me is always tough. So if you're going through something at this time of year, isn't the joyful celebration that you see other people going with, I understand what you're going through. I empathize with you, and I hope you can find some inner joy in what's going on. But have fun with your families. Have a great weekend, everybody. Luka and I will be back on Sunday. It'll be Monday morning, hopefully with a big Bills win to talk about. And we will see you next time on Bills Chat Live.